Now, there's a new book out which tries to explain how to have teenagers and yet stay sane. It says that 74% of teenagers tell their parents little or nothing about their boyfriends or girlfriends. But when it comes to the secret lives of our teenagers, do we really want to know it all? Do you think you do know it all, Linda?
No, I don't think I do want to know it all, really. But I found a very good wheeze was to have, as a single mum, obviously, but was to have lots of people round to Sunday lunch. So a big long table, and everybody get chatting, and a bit of wine would flow. And where I might say to my son, or, you know, so how was last Saturday? He'd go, fine. And that would be the end of the conversation. If somebody he didn't know very well asked him down the other end of the table, he'd tell them. And then he'd, like, you know, he'd say, oh, and there was this bouncer who threw me against a wall, and then we got done. And I'd stop talking at the other end. That works a treat. But I think in the main, they do start to self-edit. And I think probably it's better you don't. I mean, again, you know, when they've come back late at night and you're up waiting and they've had a few and their tongues are loose, you know, it's, oh, I love you, Mum. And then it all comes out and you're, really? Oh. Where was that? Fine. And in the morning, you know, you say, so that was good then, you did this, this, this and this. What?
I think you're right about the self-editing. From a sort of sexual point of view, Matthew is very open with me. Because although he's nearly 19, part of me wants to go la 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 as if I just can't imagine him doing it. But I know that he is, and he's very careful, and we do have quite open and frank discussions. But the things he doesn't tell me, a bit like you've just said about your boys, is when his mate says, you know, oh God, it was so great that Matt was with me at the hospital till 5 o'clock in the morning, you know. I go, what do you mean? And Matthew turns into some kind of vigilante force in the village at night and tries to stop all these fights and everything, you know. So he doesn't sort of tell me that, but he's very frank. I was always very frank with my parents, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And I had parents who, if my friends had a problem when we were teenagers, they could go to my mum to talk about things. So I've tried to encourage that in Matthew. We had dinner in London last week. And because, you know, we live in a busy household and we've got Louis, the devil child at 6 years old, who takes up quite a lot of time. Now, I am dreading his teenage years. I mean, the Omen has got nothing on that child at the minute. But,
he's lovely.
Yes, he's lovely with you.
And he just doesn't like you. Well, get over it.
What about your boys, though? Because you do have a very open, honest
I do, and I
relationship
think
with
mine
them.
stems from the fact that my parents weren't good. You know, I didn't tell my parents anything. It was just, you just didn't discuss things like sex or any kind of, you know, physical
Personal
or
sort of
medical personal worries with them. You just didn't. And I always remember as a kid thinking, you know, if and when I have children, I want to make sure that they can feel they can always come to me with whatever is worrying them or troubling them. And like you're saying, they do now. And they do tell me lots of things where you think, oh, I wish I'd have been a bit more like my parents. Because you don't want to go,
You don't want to look
beg your
horrified.
pardon.
Yeah.
So you go, really? And what time is the appointment at the clinic? You know, it's one of them.
Well, obviously, I'm a long way away from the teenage years with mine, but is there a point... You want to be their friend so that they feel they can open up and talk to you, obviously, but there has to be boundaries.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to be the parent, not the friend.
Yeah,
because when it comes to discipline...
Yeah, and I do say to them, you know, we've had that conversation as well, that, you know, there are certain things that I am their mum, you know, first and foremost, and there has to be that line.
Yeah.
You know, so that they know that there are certain things that they'll tell me and they will get a lecture about it, or... You know, but I don't want to be naive, Mum, as well, and go, oh, my son tells me everything, because I'm sure there's a lot he doesn't.
They don't know.
And they don't listen to you when you discipline them, do you?
Well, and this survey says the most popular means of discipline is grounding. 40% of parents use grounding as a form of discipline. Is that something that you've done?
That's always worked with us. Actually, it works better now since I met Ray, and he grounds me. No. It's because when I used to ground them, the whole thing about grounding initially was, I don't mind grounding them, but can I ground them in someone else's house? Because I don't really want them stuck with me for a week. So I used to think, right, you ground at your auntie's. But also now, and then what I'd do is, so you ground them for a week, and after 2 days, when they've gone back to being angel child, and they go, yeah, my friends have phoned, I've told them I'm grounded, and you go, go on then, you've been good. But Ray then came along and he said, absolutely not, if they're grounded for a week, they stay in for a week, and he takes everything out the bedroom, obviously not the bed, but he takes the TV and the videos, completely unplugs it out for a whole week. And it's funny because probably since Ray's been there, they've only actually been grounded about twice because they knew, if he said once more and you're grounded, they just stop.
means
And
I
I think
wish he'd
that's
come
the
to
whole
my
point.
house. I mean, I've watched films in American films, you know, where you go, and you're grounded for a week, and the child goes, OK, Mum. And I mean, me and grounding, you know, it would be, and you're grounded for a week. To which he'd go, no, I'm leaving. No, you're not. You're not. You're not. Get out the door. That's me.
So when did that sort of that difficult moment
Well, they're about
happen?
45 now, so...
What's
Yeah,
the,
but
what's
you're
the...
quite soft, though, as well, aren't you?
Me?
I think you're kind of fiery, you know.
Yes, I am
But then
pathetic.
you are also, when you talk about your boys, and we go, well, you know, he's 24, tell him to get out. You go, oh, no, I couldn't possibly.
But I think we're all too soft. I mean, Tim's, you know, Tim's a bit like Ray. That's where our arguments come from a lot of the time. Because the thing is, if you do that kind of discipline, you've then got to keep it up, and you've then, if they're not allowed to have their PlayStation stuff, you've then got to play with them and do finger painting. Not Matthew, because he's 19, but he still likes a bit of finger painting.
I mean, it's the sexual content.
Yeah. But no, I think that, and it's also like the, Tim says to me, he will never stand on his own 2 feet if you keep giving him money all the time. And I know that he's right, because Matthew's energy is only around when it's to do with music, which is why I like to, he's in an indie band, which is why I like to go and see him do gigs, because it's the only time I see any energy. And he's throwing himself around, and he's the, you know, the lead in this band and everything. And then he comes off and I go, darling, that was great. And he goes, yes, thanks. Can you take the guitar? and that's the energy for the week or for the month, you know, until the next thing. They're on at the Boiler Room in Guildford tonight. I'll just give them a look.
Do you know, I can't wait.